Shing shing. Keg-Filet TCG. Oh, hey guys, what's up? I got a special video today, a semi-guide to Red Purple Law. I talked with Justin Jansuko Tyler, where he was the runner-up at the recent LA tournament last weekend with Red Purple Law. In this video, we go over why you should play Law and then the deck list. I first want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, brought to you by my patrons. Thank you everybody on my Patreon for subscribing. And on my Patreon, I have a full 1,000 word article and a full video of Red Purple Law guides where we do go over the mulligans, the early, the mid, the late game, and all the relative matchups with additional notes on the side. In the description, please join the Discord, get in the discussion, and a huge shout out to Justin for doing this video with me. His Twitter is below. Please go follow that. He also has a Calendly now where he can facilitate his coachings. Now, without further ado, let's get into the goo. It's a great day here at Keg-Filet's Patreon. I am the Keg-Filet. Today I have with me Justin Jansuko Tyler, RP Law, super great. He's been on the channel before on YouTube, collaboration, and the lawman himself. How are you doing today, Justin?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. A little tired, but you know, just powering through it.
Yeah. It's Tuesday, so you just recently topped on Saturday, Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Going second place at a huge regional where, you know, Red Purple Law is still good, and we're going to, I think, a few more tournaments with Red Purple Law, and kind of want to get your ideas, specifically a full guide for the deck going forward. And that's what this is going to be, guys. Make sure you guys use the timestamps down below. If you're not used to this patron, basically I just have timestamps down here where you can go and see all of the specific points, because we'll go over all these questions here. But without further ado, let's actually get into the goo. I like to go over why. Why should we be playing Red Purple Law?
I feel like you should be playing Red Purple Law if you are wanting to play a deck that I wouldn't say it does it all, but it's a mid-range aggro deck that can get the job done. It has removal, it has clear, it has draw. It's slightly inconsistent. Of course, depending on the build, can change that, like variance-wise, made it better or worse. But I feel like it's a solid deck to pick up right now, especially since we're going into a meta where Sakazuki is no longer the boogeyman.
Good, right? Yeah, I mean that too. It didn't have a hard matchup, like impossible against Sakazuki, right? But I guess the main reason why it's so good, it just it removes board and also is aggressive, which I think the fact that it ends turns generally around opponents. It usually end turn around opponents like 9-10 dawn turn, or maybe the turn after, right? Like, so 6 turns or sooner is pretty good. If your opponent gets less turns in the game, then they they have less options, right? So where I guess one thing I do want to say about this deck is that a lot of the cards do generally similar things as far as reduction and then ramping, and we'll go over the deck list specifically. But one thing that this deck kind of lacks, which isn't actually a bad thing, is searchers, right? A lot of decks have searchers, so you can mulligan a little more greedier, right, to get those. But the thing is, although a lot of cards that do the exact same thing, like Raise Max, you can even say like Otama, or things that ramp up like Bonclay, Sunday, Ein, Sachi Penguin, right? Some better than others, obviously, but generally a lot of cards do the same thing, so you kind of always get a mixed hand regardless. Other than Reiju is just her own broken But is that would you say that's kind of accurate as far as that goes? Um,
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty accurate. You're kind of just hard drawing into everything that you need. So that's like one of the weaknesses of the deck is that you're not going to always see the pieces that you need to see. You kind of just
mhm,
have to get lucky unless you're running a film variant, which is consistent in which you can see the cards that you want, but not consistent enough
mhm.
for, like to play against the meta where they can just do it but better.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. With that, we're gonna go briefly over the deck list. I'm gonna go over some choice cards. I think we'll go over like some of the more standard stuff later because I would say at least 20 or so of these cards are definitely stock. But the first question I like to tell people, because people ask this a lot of times, is why play the 2K Sanji? And I'd like you just to answer that. Why do we play a 2K Sanji?
At first, I was kind of mad about it, and also, by the way, as a shout out, this deck list was highly recommended to me by Kim, OPTCG. You can find him on Twitter. But yes, I was a little skeptical about Sanji, but there are going to be games where, yeah, especially against a Nell, where their whole plan is to starve you. That's where he excels. Otherwise, he's just a 2K.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's people who would like to put up the argument about why not just run Kamazo instead, since it has a 5K body on it and it can KO 2 cost or less. Sure, but most of the time he's usually kept in your hand, and you don't really want to play it against Sakazuki because it's a 2K and they can get rid of it just as easily.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically has the same amount of value as Sanji does, where you kind of only play
Mm-hmm.
him one time just for the specific purpose, except against, a Nell or maybe Perona, because I fought a Perona and they like to stall. So just jam it, draw a card, and you're probably a little bit fine. Of course, it doesn't truly fix the problem against playing against NL, but we can get into that
Mm-hmm.
later.
Yeah, I definitely would say it's a good option to have. It's when you people just play like a purple law, and there's an option to just like trash your opponent's hand, right? The fact that this exists, people have to play around it, so they actually play like a little bit differently. Have a smaller hand, so avoid that. In the same way, because Sanji exists, they actually can't damage deny you because it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense for them. Um, so it's just the fact that you having this in your deck gives that option open where you can actually not get damaged tonight and just lose off of just getting a Gadatsu to death, right? Because that's basically what they'll do. It's just keep you at 4 life because that they Gadatsu your fork drops, which ends
Yeah.
up being pretty bad in the long run.
Hmm.
So okay, great. I think that's a good reason why. And I guess I know Zoro is mostly here just for Sakazuki, or maybe even some other tech choices when you're a little aggressive, and Zoro Juro might be looked at more in the future. I know that's another thing, but I mean this is kind of just a staple right now because it's just really good against Sakazuki. Would you? Is there anything else that maybe it's effective against, or just in general seems to be like another kid killer?
It's 100% for Sakazuki and a little bit Moria too, since a lot of black decks they carry a lot of 2Ks and they kind of just at some point feel like you're playing against a wall while they're just doing a bunch of garbage. But Zoro, like 3 costs in the game don't really exist right now, but the reason why Zoro does is because he's a rusher, so he gets immediate value rather than
Mm-hmm.
value that you would get over time because he's not going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So Zoro helps with the black decks. Zoro's also just another option to use as a finisher when it comes to ending the game, because if you don't see your hidden killers, which happens a lot, you're gonna need some way to just like get that last attack and swing in, and Zoro helps with that.
Got it. With this too, you also have 2 Fire Fists, which is probably the bigger thing about this. A lot of people just rather run like 8 of these combination of cards, but Fire Fist is this. Did you want to give any explanation to Fire Fist of why you chose this in general, and maybe why people should play at least 2?
It's largely a Sakazuki hate card, but it does have its uses. It's like, yeah, it's mostly for black because they run Rebecca, like Gecko Moria and Sakazuki. So being able to pop the Rebecca while minusing something by -4, you can get rid of 2 units on board
Mm-hmm.
realistically. It also helps against Whitebeard and yellow decks that run. So it helps against red ace, it helps against yellow ace, and it helps
Yeah, any
um
7K body. Yeah.
yeah, against green Uta, which is pretty good because of the blocker Luffy.
Yeah.
The extra 1K matters depending on the matchup.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So it can matter sometimes. Is the trigger effect ever came up, by the way? Um.
Yeah, so it has come up
Okay.
once. Uh, it wasn't like broadcasted, but it did give minus 4K to a the Gecko Mori that I was playing against. He had two more swings after he hit
Mm,
me. I minus the Absalom by 4K, and that relieved like a ton of pressure off of me because that was minus one swing basically.
mm,
It's like a pseudo rad beam with an
yeah.
extra effect attached to it.
Okay. Yeah. Like if Rad Beam was that trigger was broken, yeah, pretty good. And then I know this is pretty much stock right now with Law. Is there any like thoughts on like Purple Law? Is he just end up being just a blocker that's there, or definitely necessary for the matchups where you need him?
He is there for playing against Sakazuki. Well, again, Black Decks and Whitebeard.
Mm,
Oh, and Nanel. Very
yeah.
strong against
The meta.
Enel, and yeah, it's just a meta card. It's a meta
Yeah.
tech card. It deals really well with decks that like to stack like really big hands, and
Mm,
I only feel like I need two of them because you're probably only going to really get off a law once, maybe twice a game.
mm,
And although he's a good blocker, all he literally does is rip cards. Otherwise, he's just a vanilla after that
yeah.
point. So I don't see a reason to run anymore.
Yeah. And then of course with Sunday, obviously this card's pretty good, but I wanted you to speak about it. What's your thoughts on Sunday in general?
I love Miss Sunday. She's really strong. Not only is she a 5 body, so it takes black decks a lot more resource to get rid of her,
Mm,
but she, instead of like Queen, she ramps you up and draws you a card that you don't have to filter out.
yeah.
So it's like an anti Queen, or it's like the opposite of Queen. Like instead of
Mm,
minusing a Dawn and drawing two but ditching one, this one's just ramp up one and draw one. And
mm,
then the trigger effect is really strong. I don't know if the audience might have seen my game where I actually got it out of life against Nikki Goldman.
yeah.
But
It proceeded to
yeah.
throw, but that's okay.
Yeah. Dude, he had all the 2Ks.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
yeah that was a crazy turn, but definitely a very good tempo card. I could see
Very
this.
strong
I can
tempo.
see this being kind of backbreaking in a lot of matchups where all of a sudden Law's now ahead of you and Dawn, right? And I do want to talk about maybe an option. I don't know if you've ever checked out like maybe even Chopper, but I know Shariah. It's kind of has to be in the deck because of the matchups that are currently there, right? Specifically being Black Yellow Luffy or even RP Luffy, right? Um,
Black Yellow Luffy, RP Luffy,
Whitebeard.
Whitebeard, Yamato. Really helps against like a couple road decks and like two more so like mainstream decks that are being used, such as
Mm,
by Luffy and Yamato. This is a really strong card, to be
mm.
honest. I
It's
would
very
run
oppressive.
it at 4, but I just didn't have the space for
Yeah.
it.
If there was a lot more Black Yellow Luffy, you might just run this F4, right?
Oh yeah,
But like so that might be like a mesquite thing people might do because there might be more Black Yellow Luffy going around then.
100%.
But that is another story, right? That's another meta we're like not worried about for about 2 weeks, which maybe we can make a list before then, specifically for Mesquite, because I think people are trying to like, win that tournament, right? That's the
Yeah,
last OPO or EB01 tournament. So great. I
yeah.
think. Is there anything else you want to talk about specifically about the deck list, or maybe some choice options before we jump over to like a mulligan?
Um, I can probably hit Ein down to 2 maybe, and
Okay.
add an addition of like maybe a fourth Shariah or a fourth Otama.
Okay.
Ein's really good, but the fact that she's a brick is actually almost kind of just sandbaggy.
Okay.
There's been a couple games where I've had one or two sitting in my hand, and I would rather it, like if it was at least a 1K, then it would probably get me out of bad situations. But she's a
Yeah.
brick, so she kind of just sits in your
Yeah, she
hand.
usually kills you more than she actually makes you win the game,
Yeah,
right? I guess one thing people always it's I don't see this anywhere else besides our Discord. Discord where people actually complain about Queen in this deck. Is there like a love-hate relationship with Queen in the deck,
Yeah,
or?
it's a big one in the community because Queen. The thing that people don't like about Queen is that he negs a Dawn, and then you
Mhm.
draw two, and then you have to ditch one. So not only are you negging yourself a Dawn, he's also 5 cost, which is good. But in a deck like this, sometimes you might be like like stripped of like Dawn or like pressed
Mhm.
for Dawn to play this, and then you can't do anything else for the rest of the turn. But the fact that you have to filter out a card, and the only cards you would actually see yourself like filtering without having a problem is probably Ein and maybe Sunday.
Mhm.
Every card in this deck is pretty important because it's so combo heavy. So
Yeah.
it's sometimes you're put into situations like, do I get rid of this 2K or do I get rid of this Gordon?
Yeah.
I want both, but I gotta
Exactly.
get rid of one.
Queen's really, really good in those decks that draw a lot of bad, like dead cards because it's
Yeah,
necessary. Because it's basically saying draw two, but
yeah,
essentially this is just a draw one, and then regret your decision later. Maybe you'll have a good
yeah,
card to discard. But okay,
yeah.
great. Is there any like optional cards you maybe would consider checking in at all?
Possibly Rad Beam
Okay.
and hmm, yeah, I'd probably say just Rad Beam for now.
Okay.
If it was post ban, I'd say like more of like the 3 cost cards,
Yeah, Zoro Duro.
but Zorjuro, Chopper, like three costs get unlocked once
Yeah.
once he leaves the game, so it makes deck building a lot easier because there are a lot of important 3 costs in the game,
Yeah.
and Sakazuki kind of made a lot of decks not too as good because of that. But
Mm-hmm.
now that he's gone, or he will be gone,
June
there's gonna be a lot of
21st.
decks with
Yeah.
more, yeah, there's gonna be decks with more flexibility involved, more just just more flexibility in the deck.
For sure. Okay. Great. With that, I want to jump into mulligans. I know it changes a little bit going first and second, but with that, what are we generally? And we can go over matchups here in a moment. But what are we generally looking to mulligan? Thank you for watching this video. If you like that video, there is more on the Patreon. We go over going first or second, the early game, the mid game, the late game, and all relative matchups. Join the Discord, look through the Patreon, and expect more and more quality guides like this. And a special thank you for Justin and my Patreons for making this video possible.